What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today we're talking free hit again, but ahead of game week 19. Now, I think a few people probably changed strategies due to all the fixture rearrangements and postponements, but when I was putting out the free hit game week 18 videos, a lot of people asked me to do the same thing for game week 19, and given that the deadline has been moved from Friday to Saturday, there's a bit of time to do it today, and obviously we are waiting for some of the game week 18 matches to finish before we can start talking about team selections and stuff like that, so I thought I would do that today. So if you're free hitting, make sure to watch the video. I'm going to go through kind of a short list, things to think about, the fixtures as well, and obviously some template drafts as well. There'll be timestamps if you want to skip forward or anything like that, but hopefully the whole video is useful. So make sure you give it a watch, hit that like button, hit subscribe if you're new around here, and let's jump into it. Okay, so let's look at the fixtures first. Obviously this is a free hit, not a wild card, so we're not worrying about the fixtures after game week 19, we're only worrying about this week. And I think it's actually quite a tricky time to free hit because apart from Man City with Crystal Palace and Aston Villa, there's not another really big team with two green fixtures, I would say, apart from Leeds, right? But let's touch on the fixtures that may not even happen. So at the time of recording this, there is still talk that Aston Villa versus Everton could be off. So if that happens, Everton will blank in game week 19 and they'll have a double game week at some point in the future. And Aston Villa will once again have a fixture postponed and only have Man City away. So whether or not we find this information out before the deadline, we may not, right? And if we do, you definitely want to kind of just not think about even going for Aston Villa players. The fixture's not even that great anyway, right? Having to play Man City away. I think on a free hit, you would probably look past Aston Villa. And when I do the templates at the end, I'm going to have a draft without any of these fixtures that could be a worry. The other one is Leeds versus Southampton. So if anyone hasn't already realised or picked up on it on Twitter and places like that, because Shrewsbury in the FA Cup are playing Southampton, that fixture had to be postponed because of COVID, like all the other fixture postponements right now. And they're talking about potentially moving Leeds and Southampton out of game week 19 to put it at some point in the future. Now, for a lot of the big teams, like Man City, Man United, not even big teams, whatever, the teams that are in Europe, it's tricky to do many more fixture rearrangements because there's not many midweeks that are going to be free because they're playing matches in Europe, right? And they can't make a team play like every kind of 1 or 2 days, right? It's just not going to happen. So for those teams, Man City, Liverpool, Man United, etc., it's tough to rearrange. But for Liverpool and Southampton, they're not in Europe. So in terms of fixture pile-up, it's not really a worry to those clubs massively if they take it out of 19 and put it somewhere else instead. And obviously they're playing twice in this week anyway, so putting it in a different week won't make much difference. But obviously to us on free hit or people free hitting, it's a worry because then only Leeds have Brighton and Southampton would only have Leicester, so it makes them much less desirable. So for most of this video I'm going to talk as if those fixtures aren't on because it does sound quite likely that Villa versus Everton could be off and so could Leeds versus Southampton. But obviously if they're on, Leeds have great priced players, Rafinha, Rodrigo, Bamford, etc. And the fixtures are also really good. Brighton at home, Southampton home. I think from an attacking point of view, that's quite good. Defensively, I probably wouldn't target Leeds on a free hit, but from an attacking point of view, I would. Looking elsewhere, Liverpool are playing Man United, right? So I know a lot of people I think are overestimating how good that Man United fixture is for Liverpool. I just think they're looking at, okay, it's 2 home games, therefore Salah will be fine. He'll score lots of points. The Burnley game is probably actually easier than people are giving it credit for. The Man United game is probably tougher than people are giving it credit for. Man United have a knack of being able to keep it tight in these games. And again, there's nothing to say that if a game is only 1 or 2 goals in it that, you know, Salah doesn't score both of them if it's 2 goals or Fernandes doesn't score both if it's 2 goals, right? I get that that can happen, but usually you're kind of betting on more goals than that to hopefully have more points spread around. Obviously, if the team scores like 4 or 5 goals, you're hoping Salah's at least involved in 2 of them, for example. So yes, it's still a good double game week for Man United and Liverpool, but it's tainted a little bit by the fact they have to play each other. So I think in another game week, right, where Liverpool are playing Palace and Villa, like Man City are, you're looking to triple up. But this week, I don't think you are on a free hit. And again, I'll talk about that in a bit. West Ham, we know how good those fixtures are. Burnley at home, West Brom at home, looks good defensively. And I would say from an attacking point of view as well, you all know who's going to get mentioned later on. Leicester's is tricky. I don't think Southampton are pushovers from an attacking point of view, right? Defensively, Southampton have been quite good. And Chelsea are really good defensively as well. I know they haven't been recently, but they're still not a bad defensive team. So I wouldn't necessarily want to target too many players from Leicester, which we'll talk about in a sec. I think Chelsea are probably where the differentials come from this week, because Fulham away is probably still quite a good fixture. We'll see just how good defensively Fulham are against Spurs in Game Week 18 when that fixture's played tonight. I'm going to put this out on, when is it? It's Wednesday. I'm losing track of the days. I had to check my watch then to see if it was Wednesday. So the game will be played tonight. So you might watch this after Wednesday and know what that match has been like. But I think Chelsea could be a team that do okay in this. Leicester away is not an easy fixture though. So again, all the big teams, Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, etc., they've all got one slightly dodgy fixture. Fulham, Chelsea at home, Man United at home, super difficult. Man United again, Fulham away, a bit like Chelsea. We'll have to see how difficult that fixture is. Burnley are not a team I'll be targeting at all on a free hit. I've got Chris Wood in my own team. That's for many reasons, right? If I was on free hit, there's no way I would have him. I would just ignore Burnley altogether. Leeds we've just spoken about. Same for Southampton. I think Southampton, by the way, I think Leicester's tricky and Leeds could be okay for Danny Ings, but I don't fancy them from an attacking point of view. I've got to be honest. I think defensively they've been good, Southampton, but attacking wise, I think you can do better for your money. Obviously on a 1 week punt, maybe you go for it, but I probably wouldn't. West Brom, complete ignore. And then Villa, because of that fixture, and because they're playing Man City away, it's pretty tricky. So it's an interesting set of fixtures, right? I'm going to come onto the template soon. Because there's some dodgy fixtures here or there, and because there's worries about postponements for some teams, especially Leeds. I think Leeds would have been big on a free hit. It kind of pigeonholes us into not probably tripling up on too many teams, apart from Man City. And hopefully, Villa's training ground will be reopened, and yes, they won't be able to play Everton, but hopefully they'll be able to play Man City. And from Man City's point of view, Villa's a tough fixture, has been all season for most teams, but probably not a bad time to play them when they've not been able to train properly. So Crystal Palace versus versus Villa definitely looks like the best fixture. So tripling up on City, outside of that, I'm not really too sure, to be honest. So just before we come on to the drafts, right, let's look at the shortlist. I did this for the free hit in Game Week 18. These are pretty much the only players that I would consider on a free hit. I may have missed some out. If I have, leave a comment below. But I'll quickly go through them, right? So Man City want to triple up. I think John Stones, Cancelo, Diaz have all got their place as options in defence for different reasons, which I'll talk about in the drafts. But John Stones is obviously cheap. Diaz is a bit more safe and nailed, but he costs a bit more. And Cancelo is so creative. I'm interested to see what happens with City against Brighton, because that could play a lot on our minds when we build Game Week 19 free hits. Sterling and De Bruyne, look, I think Foden, Mahrez, Gundogan potentially options as well, but I wouldn't probably consider them on a free hit. I want players that I'm more hopeful or think that it definitely will happen that they start both games. For Man United, Wan-Bissaka is the only defender that I would consider. Maybe David De Gea, but I think there's better goalkeeper options this week. The reason why Wan-Bissaka is because Luke Shaw and Maguire are both on 4 yellow cards. So, look, for anyone that's played FPL for a while, you remember back in the day when Costa was at Chelsea, he was 1 yellow card away from 5 for ages. And lots of us, including me, went without him, and he kept on scoring goals and kept not getting that 5th yellow card, to the point where it was very detrimental not to go for him. But on a free hit, there's no point in taking that risk for me. Maguire, yes, he's got goal threat. Yes, he should have had a goal yesterday against Burnley, in my opinion. But Wan-Bissaka's not got that problem. So if Shaw or Maguire get a yellow card in that first game against Liverpool, which is obviously not likely to happen, but it could happen, it's going to be quite a fierce game, I would say, then they missed the second game against Fulham. There's no point taking that risk on free hit. Arguably, Luke Shaw is going to share minutes with Tellez anyway, potentially. Even though I do think Shaw's first choice, but Tellez is always there. And against Fulham, I wouldn't be surprised to see him play. And obviously, Bailly Lindelof situation, I just wouldn't go there. Rashford, Fernandes, Martial, the only real players I would consider. Cavani maybe, but I don't see him starting both games, but you never know. Lookman potentially at Fulham because he's so cheap, but the fixtures are awful, so I probably wouldn't go there. The obvious players from Liverpool, Trent, Robertson, Salah, Mane. I wouldn't be spending a spot on the likes of Matip, even if he's back. Wouldn't be going to Alisson, he's too expensive. Firmino, I just think there's better options. Lots of potential options from Chelsea. Reece James, if he's fit, I think he is back training now. Whether or not you'd want to put that much faith in him to start both games, I'm not sure. But Ben Chilwell, Kurt Zuma, the other defenders, I wouldn't go near Thiago Silva. I don't think there's enough upside for his price. Mendy in goal, option at 5.1. Ziyech, Pulisic and Werner. I've not put like someone like Mount or Havertz. I just don't think I would go there. But I think Chelsea, like I said earlier, are probably the team with the biggest differentials, with the most potential. Even though their fixtures aren't necessarily amazing, they're still not bad either. Leicester, Justin Castagna in defence. Maddison maybe in midfield. I probably wouldn't go there, but I know a lot of people like him. I just think he's on a bit of a hot streak, but he does blow a bit hot and cold. I owned him for a long time last season. He was great for this short stint, and then he was just awful for ages. I just don't have that much faith in him, so he wouldn't be in my team, but he would be on the shortlist. Jamie Vardy, of course, and then quite a few options at West Ham. Craig Dawson, bit of goal threat, scored in the FA Cup. So far, everyone owns. Cresswell, a bit more expensive, bit more creative as well. Souček and Antonio, I don't even need to talk about them, right? Antonio's fit. He is 100% on the shortlist. So now we've got our shortlist of players we're going to choose from. Let's start building the drafts. So let me get through the quick disclaimers that I always do. Yes, your team value might not be as high as mine. It might even be higher, right? It could be higher or it could be lower. So you might not be able to afford this team. I'm not expecting everyone just to copy this and go for it. It's just to give you an idea of structure and players that I would be looking at. I've also put in basically all the cheapest players. So Forster in goal, Douglas, Mitchell. And by the way, Douglas, right? So many comments about why you can't find him. He is not for some reason on the app. But if you use the desktop site, so you can do it on a phone, just go to the site instead of on the app, you'll find him for Leeds at 3.8 million. Mitchell at 3.9, then Davis up front, because I'm doing a 3-5-2 for this draft, right? And I think if you're picking a player that you're not sure is going to start at least one game in a double, you're probably doing it wrong. So I wouldn't be too worried about the bench this week. But obviously, if you've got some money left over, I think this team for me has got about 0.5 left over. So I might be able to, if I played around a bit more, stretch it to having like Craig Dawson on the bench or something like that from West Ham. But this is a 3-5-2. I think there's some key players in here that would pretty much be in every single draft, right? Big hitters. So the big hitters so far this season that everyone's gone to: Salah, De Bruyne, Fernandes, obviously Kane and Son as well, but they don't have a game this week. So I think Salah, De Bruyne, Fernandes, I'd find it really difficult to not own those players in my team this week. Fernandes is in the same situation as Maguire and Shaw, by the way, that if he gets a yellow card against Liverpool, he would miss the Fulham game. So he is a bit of a risk. I think for captaincy now, that's probably, for those of us that are engaged, that's probably going to put us off captaincy. And again, it could be the Diego Costa effect, where he goes on and scores loads and we don't captain him because of that. But for me, he's not the best captain this week anyway, so that doesn't worry me. But I would still take the risk and put him in because we know what he can do. If you wanted to be a bit more risk averse, you could just put Rashford in potentially instead and spread some money elsewhere. But I think those three in midfield would definitely be in for me. I think I spoke earlier about the fixtures. I think in terms of the big teams, right, the teams like Man City, Man United, Liverpool, etc., Man City have got the best fixtures, right, Villa and Crystal Palace. And I think I would go for the same three that I went for the free hit in Game Week 18. Now, again, depending on where you put your money, if you've got some left over, I probably would go for Diaz instead of Stones. We'll see what happens against Brighton, right? Because, again, at the time of recording this, I've not seen them in Game Week 18. But I think Cancelo, Stones and Diaz are pretty nailed at this point. Diaz, yes, he's probably an 8 out of 8 games player, but Stones and Cancelo are at least 7 out of 8 games, I think, the way they've been playing. So I quite like them, and I think triple up on Man City just looks like the way forward, right? For Game Week 18 and Game Week 19. So I would definitely have those three in there. I think you could go for another attacker, and I've got another attacker in the next draft, but I just think it's difficult to fit Sterling in because of the funds you've got elsewhere. Triple Chelsea in this one, right? I think that will cause a few stirs, but I should have explained earlier. The reason I've called this the safe one is because I've not gone for any Aston Villa players because they might miss that first game and then they're playing Man City. No West Brom players because they're just not options for me at all. And no Leeds and no Southampton because there's a chance they only have one game. I think for anyone not free hitting and just playing on normal... you're just wildcard or you're just managing your team normally. Like I've got Bamford, I would still play him in Game Week 19. I'd be perfectly happy to bench boost him. But I think for a free hit, you'd probably ignore that if that fixture wasn't going to be on. So that kind of makes it more difficult to fill out. So I've gone for Antonio up front. I just think West Brom at home and Burnley at home, right? He's just played 90 minutes in the Cup. As long as David Moyes says he's come through and he's fine, right, which I've not seen any reports that he isn't, he's 100% in the team. He's so cheap. He's so good as well. I've talked about him so much, I know, right? And some people are still seeing the funny side. Some people are still probably starting to get sick of me talking about him. But I just can't look past the fact I had him last year, 4 goals versus Norwich. We know what he can do on his day. Not expecting 4 goals at all, right? He could just get 2 or 3 across 2 games. But the fixtures are just so good. And I don't think West Brom, the big Sam effect, right? We haven't seen that yet. I think West Ham are a good team. Antonio just makes him into a different attacking unit, and he would definitely be in my free hit team. The biggest issues, I guess, are Pulisic and Werner. for a lot of people, especially Werner, right? He has got off the mark. I say got off the mark. He scored before, but he obviously went through this goal drought. I know it was in the FA Cup. I know it was an easier, I think it was Morecambe, right? I know it was an easier fixture, but I don't know. Like I was watching, I think it's Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix recently, and you just see the difference it makes in players when they score, right? Maybe it doesn't actually affect them long term, but you can just see the difference when you get off the mark, or in this case, get back off the mark like Werner. So I just think the fixtures aren't too bad. That Fulham game I think could be quite good. I think he's a bit of a differential. I think he will be a bit of a differential this week. He hasn't been for most of the season, but this week he will. And Pulisic is a player I've always liked. Obviously, he's had injury concerns, but I think he'll start both games in this one. It's difficult to know. We'll have to see what Lampard says as we get closer to the deadline, but they're the kind of players that I would put in. I think for their prices, it's very difficult to fit anyone else in. You could probably go a bit cheaper than Werner, but if you're not going for if you're not going for Leeds players, it's hard to fit in another cheap striker out of the teams that we're looking at. If you could downgrade him, then you could upgrade Pulisic to someone else if you wanted to instead. But I quite like the setup of this team. I think Chelsea defence is really good, and I think the fixtures are good enough to put a Chelsea defender in, so I've got Chilwell in this one. And then you have to cover, I think, West Ham defensive players, because Burnley at home, West Brom at home is so good. So in this one, I've got Fabianski in goal, but obviously you could have Sofao or Dawson or someone like that instead. So I really like this team. I think the two biggest issues are Pulisic and Werner, but given the teams that we're looking to target, and if we're taking Southampton and Leeds out because they're probably or possibly not going to play twice, then it's difficult to find anyone else to fit in. And I just think it's a bit of a differential for a one-week punt. You've got so many bases covered, like safe picks, basically. Having Pulisic and Werner is a little bit different, and I kind of like it. So it's safe because no Leeds, no Southampton, no Villa. But let's take a look at a different one if we were including those players. So if we got confirmation that Leeds versus Southampton was on, it would change my thoughts a little bit, but not hugely, right? Because I'm still ignoring Aston Villa, I'm still ignoring West Brom pretty much. And I put one Leeds player in, which I think would be Bamford. Now, for those people that aren't free hitting, I still think players like Rafinha and that are great. And obviously for a bench boost, they're really decent. But on a free hit, you can't bench boost as well. So that doesn't come into effect. So you've still got Salah, Fernandes, De Bruyne in midfield. I don't think, personally, I wouldn't go without those three. You could play around a lot and probably, build a stronger overall squad. But I don't know if it would make a huge amount of difference if you downgraded any of them to where you would put more money. The players that aren't in either of these drafts are Liverpool defenders. Now, Liverpool defenders look great. I get it, right? Burnley at home looks like a decent fixture. But I think the big thing for me is, will Man United score? And I think they are odds on to score at least one goal in that match against Liverpool. It's going to be tough. It's going to be at Anfield. It's not going to be easy for Man United. But I do think most people will bet on Man United at least scoring. Forget about whether they win the game. It's about whether they score. So as soon as they do, you'll then expect an attacking returns from Robertson or Trent. Now, again, if you're going to expect attacking returns from any defender in the league, Trent and Robbo are probably good picks for it, right? But I think once you take out the clean sheet, then you're betting more on the Burnley game. I think you can do without them just because of how good West Ham's fixtures are and just how good Man City's fixtures are as well. Now, whether or not you would go with Cancelo, if you were just going for one Man City defender, potentially you would just go for Diaz instead. That's up for debate. But either way, I would just go for a Man City defender in that slot. And I've gone 3-4-3 for this one because I think Bamford's such good value. And I would argue, to be honest, with the fixtures Leeds have got, if they both get played, Bamford is as good, if not a better option than Werner anyway. So I would definitely have Bamford in if we knew that Southampton fixture was definitely on. And I'd possibly play 3-4-3. You can play around with this however you want. I don't think there's too many midfielders around the kind of 8 to 9 million price point in the double game week that I would go for. You could look at players like Son, who don't have a double game week. That's a good option against Sheffield United. Rashford is potentially a better option if you can get up to like 9.6 or whatever price he is at the moment. But I think Pulisic's such a good price. And elsewhere, it's more punty. Like I even before I started talking about this draft on the video, went back and just double checked on midfielders and forwards that are kind of around, for midfielders around 8 to 9, and then forwards at 7 below. There's hardly any options for the double game week, I don't think, that are decent. Like Danny Ings, I'm not sure he's necessarily worth the money so far this season. I know he's got that Leeds game, so it looks good, and maybe I regret saying that. I would consider a punt on him for my own team, but I just think if I was free hitting, he wouldn't be in there. I've gone for a second Man City attacker in this slightly more differential team. I've gone for a Man City attacker, so double up on attack instead of defence. I don't think it really matters too much which way round you go, because I think Crystal Palace is a good defensive and attacking fixture for City, and then Villa, who have not been training properly, that could be a good time to play them as well. So Jesus, I think, is a nice option. He should be back. Let's see what he does in game week 18. If he doesn't, maybe you go for 3-5-2 and put Mahrez or Foden or Gundogan instead. But this is just something a bit different. You could still go for double Man City defence. There won't be any issues with that. But I just think West Ham's fixtures for this are so good. I think on a free hit, doubling up on West Ham looks pretty good. We all wanted to do it originally before the fixtures started becoming chaotic. Everyone was looking at Sofa and Balbuena. But in this, you can afford Cresswell as well. So I think it looks good. I think Antonio's still in there. Pulisic, De Bruyne, Fernandes, Salah. That's a midfield I really like. One Man City defender for sure. And then because the money is a bit tighter in this one, because you've gone for Jesus up front, and it's 3-4-3. You can't afford Chilwell in defence, but you can afford Mendy in goal. At least this is for my team. And so you, instead of having Fabianski, you go for Cresswell, because Mendy and Cresswell is a bit cheaper than Chilwell and Fabianski. So there you go. That's something a little bit different. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the drafts, and also what your drafts are looking like. That's it for this one. Hopefully for those of you on free hit, it was useful. I know not everyone is using that this week, but there will be the regular previews, team selections, captaincy, deadline streams, as well as a knee-jerk stream on Thursday evening to come this week. So plenty more content, but we keep it rolling today with the free hit. So if you've enjoyed it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and obviously comment below and let me know where I've gone wrong and where you would change those drafts. For anyone that hasn't already signed up to Patreon, there's a link in the description below if you want to support me and the channel a little bit further. There'll be extra Q&As over there before Game Week 19, as there is every single week. There's Slack access, the Patreon Slack channel, which is all the Patreon members. There's over 200 people now, so thank you very much to everyone that's already signed up. If you want to sign up, like I said, link in the description below. Everyone that signs up gets up on the Legends wall and a shout out the first time you sign up as well. So if you want to check that out, like I said, you can do by clicking that link in the description below. It's amazing, that description below. It's got so much stuff in it you would not believe if you haven't already checked it out. I'll leave the video there. I'll be back tomorrow to start previewing Game Week 19 and start thinking about what the hell we're going to do with all this fixture chaos. And obviously, if there's any news with Leeds, Southampton, Villa, Everton, I should say, then obviously we'll cover all that. So thanks for watching. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.